Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of Inhuman Resources, here with Kuroaka in the evaporation department. Possibly even Kuroaka even. But we want to learn more about the Smyrna Society, the early version of Smyrna Core. So we also want to find out about her founder. So Gertrude Borodine even. He looks hesitant, then reaches beneath his lab coat, retrieving a sheet of time yellow paper. It looks like papyrus from an ancient Egypt. On the verge of becoming dust, he tells you to destroy the document after reading it and nothing else. The contents must be rather controversial. The Erasure Manifesto. To eternize is to fracture, to eternize is to go astray. Whoever finds this message, the original version of this manifesto was found carved in aspen trees trunk in a forest near Tartu, Estonia. The first step towards escaping the surveillance is to memorize the manifesto. Do not forget one single word. Above all, do not write anything down. Do not record it anywhere. The manifesto must exist nowhere save inside your body. The sole medium you can trust. I'm not going to be able to remember all that. Oh well. Why did you choose to get evaporated? Why don't you explain which blood relative you prefer to sodomize if held at gunpoint? Or tell me all the life experiences that inspired your preferred banking passwords. Don't you have compelling reasons in forming those choices? You stagger back as the supervisor steps forward. His short stature seemed to tower over you more than ever. When you explain to him there's no way in hell you'll tell him those things, he cuts you off. Precisely. If you care about your privacy when it comes to such trivial matters, I suggest you think twice about violating mine with insensitive questions. I apologise for my brusqueness, but you need to understand, my past life is a personal matter that I deliberately left behind, not some curious anecdote for strangers to gawk at. I ask only that you respect my right to be forgotten, and learn to tolerate the itch of unstated curiosity. I spent good money to leave that man since buried, and decades rebuilding an identity I could be proud of. Now I have the privilege of atoning by offering the same mercy this company gave to me to other souls in need. That is all you need to know, and all you ever shall. Sheesh. Sore subject, huh? His commitment to Smyrna Core makes a bit more sense at least. He's not just making a living, he's undergoing an act of penance. Desperate to redeem himself for the crimes of a past life, but something tells you desperation is driving him to commit actions that serve his martyr-like ego rather than his clients. Either way, you're in no hurry to irritate a consternated killer. You change the topic quickly, leaving the room's proverbial elephant utterly unaddressed. And how old is the Smyrna Society anyway? He makes the death of Borodine's dream sound like ancient history, yet Burgard also spoke of rock bands from the 60s as though he'd met them yesterday. The timeline of events here is vague at best, and this office's outdated decor probably isn't helping. I'm afraid that I no longer remember that, new blood, and Smyrna Core made certain that no one on Earth ever would. The company's interference in human civilization has so fundamentally altered the foundations of recorded history, our very understanding of time itself has become irreparably warped. I could tell you Borodine disappeared 2 centuries ago, or that I will be born 60 years from now, and neither one would be a lie. Such is the extent of their greed-driven devastation. You can't tell if he's claiming to be from the future, or that the current year isn't what you think it is, or both, or neither. But you doubt getting an answer would help things make any more sense. Regardless, the lab coat-clad man clearly has nothing more to say on the matter. And why the Smyrna Society? Does that word mean something? Smyrna was once a city in the heart of the Aegean Sea, set between the borders of countless nations, a repository of world history, and a beating heart of international commerce, a mecca of the arts. However, it is also supposed to change constantly. For a time it was part of Roman Asia, under the reign of Alexander the Great, then it was subjugated by the Ottoman imperialists. Come World War I, a great fire consumed massive swathes of its populace and treasures, after which it was renamed to Izmir, before then being placed under Turkish rule. And if we ever go further back, there's proof it was once a village populated by indigenous people who predated Greek antiquity. Miss Borodine admired the area's phoenix-like ability to constantly rise from the ashes, continually reinvent itself, and persist in spite of endless socio-technological advancements, hence the moniker of her society, dedicated to similar goals. As for Smelokor, the old man, does that make sense? The old man, his corkboard of knife-pinned paperwork. The old man is going to spit on some paper, because I don't think that makes sense as a sentence. I can only presume those vultures' intentions, but I suspect they merely sought to keep the brand recognition Gertrude's society had built up, all while defining its legacy. Or perhaps one of their precious focus groups suspected it would sound marketable to monstrous investors. Whatever the case may be, it remains a name steeped in tradition, whose reputation has been trampled. That is all you need to know. Well, that history lesson had a sour ending. Then again, what history lesson doesn't these days? If Borodin doesn't run the company, then who the hell is in charge? Well, surely that's the guy who hired us. Presumably it's Abuya. He rolls his eyes, shoulders slouching as he stares at a row of portraits framed upon a distant wall. The photographs' faces range from acne-ridden teenagers to cartoonishly charming grandmothers wearing wooden shawls. You suspect most of them are people who no longer exist. Listen well, new blood. I've been doing this job for a very, very long time, and I've asked myself that question a few times. Not once have I uncovered a satisfying answer. Wait, does he mean he isn't sure who runs the show either? But he's a supervisor. How can he not know where his orders are coming from? This whole company should have imploded 1,000 times over by now. As a mix of panic and outrage floods his system, he clears his throat with a sound like sharpened sabres slipping free of their scabbards. Do not be naive. Many corporations keep their true hierarchies concealed for the benefit of privacy, and Smelokor controls so many private assets, so many people across the planet. This level of obfuscation is imperative for its survival. That being said, I've been here since the days of Gertrude Borodin. I've seen her life's work constructed into an engine of capitalism in real time, and even I could not identify those who sit atop the corporate ladder, not even tell you how many rungs the ladder has. To be frank, there are times when I look at this company's nonsensical decisions, or at its recent obsession with radium, and I wonder, what kind of person could concoct such an incoherent combination of contradictory choices, intentionally or otherwise? Are there many leaders steering the ship, or individually vying for supremacy? Are they creating an infinite feedback loop so the services are always in demand? Or perhaps is there no one sitting atop the throne, leaving the kingdom to bleed itself dry? As demented as such a scenario seems, there's clearly an imbalance of power going on at the top. Maybe L plans to exploit some weakness inherent to Smelokor's executive structure in order to take it down. Squeezing your hand to muffle your thought-detecting microchips beeping, you decide to change the subject. Can you tell me more about the department? Its purpose seems vague. Frankly, there's little I haven't already told you. The department's philosophy is simple. While the rest of the company concerns itself with modification or subjugation, we handle all tasks related to outright erasure. This can mean assassinating individuals so that doppelgangers may take their place, or the temporary kidnapping of targets requiring psychological reconfiguration by the substitution department. Other times we're required to retrieve sensitive documentation or eliminate all physical evidence of historical events Smelokor deems inconvenient for their long-term forecasts. In short, we perform standard wetwork operations meant to keep other employees' hands clean. Considering how messy these lobotomies look, you're not sure how clean can be the operative word. But there's no denying that some desk workers must have it easy, compared to those who have to destroy loving families with their own two hands. What about the work they do inside the office? In-house evaporations typically involve requests from consenting clientele seeking erasure of their own volition. We offer a variety of services to destroy government records and other traceable physical components in order to grant our patients fresh starts. Sadly, we rarely see willing customers anymore. Smelokor no longer allows most individuals to have significant control over their own lives, but I still receive enough visitors to remain constantly overworked. Until old age finally cuts me down, I intend to treat every single one of my patients with as much respect as I can muster. After all, I know just how badly a person can crave erasure. Anyone driven to such desperation deserves nothing less than utmost compassion. He looks to a chippily whistling Teodor, a sad twinkle in his ice-cold eyes. Seems he really is invested in every single one of these cases, and to a surprisingly personal degree. This reference is why I consider the upcoming partnership with Radium to be an abomination. They would have us eliminate the very heart of our practice, the ability for people to choose evaporation of their own volition, and they would see our kindness eliminated in the name of efficiency. Thus, before that damnable contract is signed, I must complete every authentic evaporation procedure I possibly can. Otherwise, I may never be able to help people the way I was helped ever again. Which means time is of the essence, new blood, hurry, and final resolve. And do we have to do this to Teodor? Are there less drastic ways to evaporate him? No matter how badly Zadrunski wants a fresh start, there must be some alternative that will spare him excess pain. Plus, he really don't want to touch those moulding compost clumps his teeth have become, with or without pliers. Can't you at least give him an anaesthetic? His firm expression does not waver, but you do notice the nerves in his back go tauter than drawn bowstrings. It seems you've offended him, grievously no less. You'd have been better off spitting in his mother's face during an open casket funeral. One you were specifically not invited to, or not dressed appropriately for. I realise you're still unfamiliar with our craft, so I'll not hold this suggestion against you, but understand that your request is tantamount to travesty. Firstly, providing anaesthetic will go against our department's historic values, providing consensual self-erasure. During a procedure as drastic and dramatic as evaporation, it is perfectly natural for a client to lose faith in their decision, whether due to suffering or second thoughts. But anaesthetic denies the possibility of backing out of the heat of the moment, and considering Teodor's aversion to already invasive differences, it's imperative we provide him these opportunities. Secondly, I would ask you to consider how much pain this man willingly put himself through already, whether by the removal of his fingerprints, or by being forced to leave loved ones behind without goodbyes. Evaporation is an intensely punishing experience, even for the most determined souls. If we, the technicians Teodor trusted his fate to, suddenly balked at a fraction of the agony he's endured, his faith in our process would be annihilated. Failing to match his determination, or failing to remain stoic when he needs reassurance the most, that would only insult his sacrifice and make this disturbing experience even more difficult to bear. With the tired sigh of an old man who has worked a hard job for too long, a wave of exhaustion seems to sweep over him. He suddenly looks his age. He sags beneath the weight of his lab coat, and the knives he once wielded definitely look too heavy for his wrinkled hands. I do understand your reluctance to harm an innocent man, but duty demands us to do what must be done, and I see mine performed with discipline rather than self-serving cowardice. It seems the guy really does care about treating his clients with empathy. Whether or not it's the same form with empathy is definitely up for debate, but it's better than you would have expected from this deranged office. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like you're going to be able to get him to budge on the topic. One way or another, you will be gouging man's teeth out, and by the sounds of it, making the process as painful as possible is kind of the point. Regardless, your inquiries revealed the man isn't as cold-hearted as he seems. He's clearly desperate to do his job right, and bases a lot of his self-worth on performing successful evaporations. If you can prove that removing Teodor's teeth is unnecessary, you might be able to talk him out of his old, overly violent habits. Easier said than done perhaps, but possible nonetheless. I don't think there's much more we can ask. No. Is there anything more with Teodor that we need to ask him quickly? Let's just quickly ask him about what he's... I don't think we need to ask about the eyes. But there are papers in Teodor's lap. What was he reading? Something. Evaporation interview transcript. Okay, so it's just his... Yeah, it's his thing with the... It's his interview. Yes, he's qualified for evaporation. Okay, it's time. Tell him we're ready to begin. As you confirm your intentions to get this stomach-churning certification over with, you see Sadurinsky wriggle on his seat. He looks both thrilled and horrified that the time has come. His supervisor, meanwhile, remains coldly dutiful. I was beginning to worry your resolve would never be sufficiently steeled, but I'm glad to see my expectations surpassed. With a look of icy purpose, he refastens the metallic device around Teodor's jaw, prying them wide open and locking them in place. Both Nard Steel and Zadrinsky let out a strange whine, his putrid teeth now on field display. The one smiling man trembles, tears leaking from his milky eyes, waves of bad breath potent as knockout gas hits you after another. As he starts to hyperventilate, his nails rake the armrests of the dentistry chair, finding purchase in the up-tattered upholstery, as if countless others had clawed at it before him in a futile bid to escape. Kuroaka nods the pliers in your fist, urging you to give Teodor a reason to start clawing harder. I'll keep him from thrashing as best I can. The removal itself won't be difficult when his teeth are so decayed, but you will still be causing extreme pain with every single pull. Be strong, brace yourself, and remember why we're doing this. Teodor's whimpers grow louder, his shrill breaths coming faster and faster. If he's trying to tell you something, you can't make out the words. A high-pitched ringing rises in your ears like an alarm siren meant to keep you from engaging in this nightmare. Are you ready to begin this evaporation? We can propose a less violent alternative. Upon hearing your suggestion, Teodor brows perked with bewildered reprieve, like a prisoner spotting their cell's key falling from a warden's pocket. However, Kazuo appears downright insulted. Leaving his patient's side, he takes a few steps closer till you can feel the angry heat coming out of his nostrils, and see cracks of frigid rime forming in his ice-cold eyes. If you're asking me to compromise the quality of our services solely to appease your own aversions, you'll find no such leniency under my supervision. Believe me, I would prefer a bloodless method, but we resort to these methods for a reason, and I pride myself on being a thorough technician. Therefore, I refuse to contemplate alternatives that would jeopardize the anonymity my patients seek. Therefore, you best provide thoughtful suggestions supported by demonstrable evidence. The small of your back grows thick with cold sweat as he murmurs his threat. Fear forms a thick lump in your throat as you gather the shards of your shattered courage, preparing to state your case. But unless you have a good one, you best resign yourself to improved dentistry. I don't have the technical literacy, but he's never been to a dentist. He has no records to erase. You quickly recount the conversation that revealed the fateful kernel of info. His stern expression shifts from an impassive coldness into an undeniably aghast stare. He whips towards his client, finally grasping the paradox's consequences. Mr. Sadurinsky, is this true? Not even once? The man moans a few incomprehensible syllables through his braced open mouth. Kuroaka reacts to each awkward shout with increasing bewilderment. Despite the supervisor's ice-cold professionalism, overwork must have been getting to him, if he's overlooked such a thing. Drat. This could be the single most severe oversight of my career. Do you have anything that could back up this claim? Hard, tangible proof of any kind. Show him what you found in the briefcase. The evaporation supervisor scours these two letters with near demented focus, deeply shocked by the fact you are correcting him. He mutters under his breath for tapping against the carpeted floor at a turbulent tempo. You were honestly expecting relief from him, not this. After much umming and even more ahs, the old man emerges from his anxious trance. His statuesque expression is now marred by a streak of sweat, like a fresh yellow scar. Not even yellow, but shallow. This changes nothing. The evaporation continues as planned. Get your pliers ready. Teodor's jaw somehow opens wider, his pale skin turning bone white. His hopes are dashed upon the rocks, like a ship made of wood, more rotten than his deep brown teeth. Your own jaw must be open as wide, but Kuroaka attempts to reassure you with a stern, sour tone. Regardless of documentation, his oral health is uniquely atrocious. Even if he cannot be identified by means of official dental records, word of mouth may suffice to establish a connection to his pre-evaporated self, and subjective rumours are more difficult to dispose of than medical paperwork. Should such a scenario occur, we even risk intervention by substitution, which could lead to Teodor's eventual lobotomization. That's true. You would certainly recognise that hideous smell by smell or sight alone. And Teodor's fresh start has no point if Doppelganger takes his place. His concerns do seem to be rather warranted. But the more you think about it, the more his argument seems to be a little off. Why would a supervisor who values precision, efficiency and empathy in his work be so scared of a fringe case hypothetical outcome based mostly on subjective worries, especially if an alternative could spare his patient pain? You suspect this has something to do with his martyr-like dedication to the evaporation department, a need to prove himself need to prove something to himself more so than a need to do his job. If you call him out on it, you could challenge his decision and spare Teodor some pretty substantial pain, but if your gambit backfires, it could cost you dearly. Stand your ground. Exactly. What point is there in saving the world if you can't save a single person? And what kind of department can claim to value empathy if they're so eager to harm their clients? It's time you find out what this is all really about. Citing your own experiences in computer science, you argue that due to the upcoming Radium partnership, Zadriniski's case file contents will inevitably be uploaded to a computerized database in a matter of days, which means you'd actually be creating dental records for him, therefore leaving a paper trail he never had before. And if Kazuo hates technology as much as you suspect, he should understand these implications. The supervisor seethes as he unifies his authority, but the anger is mostly directed at himself. He knows your arguments are sound, he knows the tooth pulling woo to do more harm than good, and not just to Teodor's gums. Yet, he remains stalwart, even in the face of blatant wrongness. Not for a logical reason, but for a desperately personal one. This department is all that remains of the original Smyrna Corps, the final moral foundation of our founder's legacy, the last crumb of her butchered dream to make the world better. It is an institution that survived the passage of time and changes in leadership through fervent adherence to tradition. I cannot cast those traditions aside, even if they compromise my patient's future. Doing so would be akin to spitting on Gertrude Borodine's grave, when it's already drowning in the saliva of others. I would not survive the shame of betraying her like this again. I need to do this new blood, not just for Teodor, not just for the evaporation's sake, but to preserve what little humanity remains in the husk of this crumbling department. An uncomfortable silence falls over the room, punctuated by the creak of Teodor's jaw brace and the huff of his deep, gasping breaths. Kazuo glances away without blinking, as though daring you to debate him, but the man looks too pitiful and too scarred to scare you anymore. It's clear that his hang-ups and insecurities have taken over. His obsession with honouring evaporation's principles was always a recurring motif throughout your conversations, but now the fears informing these obsessions have been laid bare, revealing that he's been ruled through fear. The real issue, however, is that those hang-ups are about to endanger an innocent man, and trying to talk sense into him might cost you access to the hive if tensions continue to rise. You need to calm him down somehow. Remind him of what really matters, so he doesn't make a mistake he regrets, or taint the traditions he's trying to protect. There's many ways you can go about it, but you need to choose wisely. You can't afford to endanger your promised certification. I think we'll go with this one. If he really cares about honouring the founder's values, letting Teodor go is the only way to do it. Kazuo sees the degradation of the company that saved him as a profoundly personal failure. Through thorough self-sacrifice, he's constantly trying to prove its traditions have value, thus giving his own life value by extension. But now he's destroying the very principles he wants to protect. You can tell Kuroaka isn't angry at you, even though his temper is red hot, he's just scared. He's scared that this department's principles, which granted him a new lease on life, are under attack. Scared that to betray them, even for a client's benefit, will be an admission that his aforementioned new life is wrong. Even at the best of times, navigating a touchy conversation under these conditions would be like traipsing across a minefield. Especially with an innocent man's well-being hanging in the balance. Because Zoro's heart is in the right place, even if his head isn't. No matter how agitated the supervisor may be, you can tell he only wants the best for his clients, who seek the same freedom he sought a long time ago. Despite claiming he can never forgive himself for betraying the Founder's principles, you suspect he'd feel a hell of a lot worse if he betrayed Teodor instead. You convey those feelings as urgently and understandingly as possible. The speech itself is clumsily worded and overly verbose, punctuated by frequent interruptions from a gurgling Zadrowinski. But, for its rough edges, your statement is filled with conviction and compassion. Thus, even the room falls silent, with the supervisor saying his head in thoughtful shame, you feel at ease, knowing that your earnest words have reached him. I'm ashamed you were forced to remind me of my own loyalties, new blood, but I'm lucky you had the courage to do so. In a single swift motion, the old man undoes the buckles, keeping Teodor's bonds fastened, and unclasps the metal cage locked around his head. Working a king out of his jaw, Zadrowinski's milky eyes go wide with awe and hope, struggling to process what's happening. Mr. Kuroaka, does this mean my dental thing is cancelled? Yes. You can thank our new associate's keen eye for that, and hopefully you'll find it in your heart to forgive me for this oversight. You may return to the post-surgical treatment room at your leisure. Your physical procedures are hereby completed. Tomorrow we will sort out the last of your paperwork and prepare for your newfound freedom. Screening the red-haired man's half-blind eyes twinkle like a sea of stars. He practically cartwheels out of the room, stopping only to shake your hand, his grip so vice-tight with gratitude that it threatens to break your wrist. Didn't think that was going to go that way. Thank you, friend. From the bottom of my heart, I'll never forget what you've done for me, no matter where my new life takes me. Tell me you were glad to help, and wish him the best. Social aptitude has gone up by 1. With one final flash of his absurdly rotten teeth, Zadrowinski leaves the room, still audibly la-la-laing with joy well after he fades from sight. You can feel good about what you did today. That took class, tact and diplomacy, more than you thought you were capable of, and that impressive display has earned you a fitting reward. Kazura reaches something beneath his lab coat and hands you a sheet of punctuated cardboard with a proud smile. Beneath a layer of thick dust, the words evaporation certification are boldly inscribed. You didn't earn this the old-fashioned way, new blood, but you deserve it nonetheless. Furthermore, I believe you've proven yourself capable of owning something like this. With a wearing flourish of frighteningly fast knife-work, he draws a razor-sharp dagger from seemingly nowhere, turning it with such absurd speed, it practically becomes invisible. When the spinning finally stops, you're presented with an extremely lethal-looking weapon. The 6-inch blade is curved and attached to a brass knuckle-shaped hilt. A hoop at its pommel suggests it was designed for extra grip and blade shanking. The strangest part, however, is the glistening dark red paint job. It almost looks like blood. Yes, that's by design. This is a dissolvable karambit knife, standard issue for all evaporation field operators. Melts down on contact with hemoglobin plasma, converting itself into a liquid indistinct from the victim's blood. Sharp enough to pierce 2-inch armor plating, yet totally untraceable upon use. I wouldn't trust just anyone this, but you've earned mine in spades. I feel safer handing you this armament than depriving you of its protection. You accept the blade gracefully, careful not to cut yourself while taking it from Kuroaka. Better not keep this thing in your pocket, the same pocket as your certification, or you'll tear the cardboard to ribbons, not to mention your own thighs. Hopefully you'll never need to use this, but extra protection won't go amiss in a place like Smirnocore. So we've got the dissolvable karambit knife and physical faculty out by 1. So that was really worth debating him down on that. It's a lot of benefits in terms of skills and inventory, and I'm sure it will come into use at some point before the end of this game. May it serve you rarely, and may it serve you well. On that note, the hour grows late. I should finish filling Teodor's report and prepare for tomorrow's tasks. You, meanwhile, should return home and get some well-earned rest. Please feel free to visit again Anytime you wish, your spirit of kindness and self-sacrifice will always be welcome here. Thank him and tell him to give your best to Teodor. The operations supervisor bows, vowing he'll pass your feelings along and offering you permanent employment should you ever choose to work in his department. By the time you've come up with a convincing excuse to never do such a thing, you're already out of earshot. Man, Kuroaka, what a guy. Genuinely cares about his patients and he let Teodor go because of it. In a company so full of mistrust and hate and craziness, it's nice to have someone so compassionate. Weaving past dying houseplants and dusty furnishings, you retrace your steps through the maze of convoluted hallways that first led you to this exhausting foray into evaporation. As said, it's a relief you were able to spare Teodor from needlessly suffering, while appeasing Kuroaka's concerns. If it weren't for your sharp eyes and empathy, your closing shift would have met a way bloodier end. At least you're walking out here with a certification to show for that trouble, and the dissolvable knife was a nice bonus, albeit a little bit grisly. Plus, it's not just any certification, with this you have everything you need to access the hive. Tomorrow you'll finally put El's plan into action, and Smonacle won't know what hit them. Boarding the office elevator, you key in the password to reach the lobby and prepare for your trip home. For no reason in particular, you find yourself extremely motivated to brush your teeth tonight. And that is the chapter complete. All cool things there. Yeah, really impressed with Kuroaka and his empathy. In my day job, I have to often use a lot of empathy in dealing with some very unfortunate people who've had a very tough time in life, and so I can relate to what he's saying. Although I haven't, replaced myself with another version of myself. Anyway, getting sidetracked. Thank you so much for watching. More to come soon, indeed. Take care. Bye bye.